She opened the fridge and left a bank statement on the counter, and one single line made my world collapse. A transfer? For $190,000. I remember the numbers like a wound. I remember my hands trembling as if someone had taken my pulse and held it underwater. I didn't go looking for drama. I went to the couch, sat, and stared at the paper until the house blurred. She walked in from the bedroom and smiled, like every other evening. "What's that?" she asked. "Casual. The same tone she used when asking about dinner." "It's our savings," I said. "Where did this go?" Her smile flickered. She said a name I didn't know. She called it a favor. She called it help. Those words were warm and tidy, and they were lies. I checked her phone with my thumb while she made coffee. There were messages stacked like receipts, booking confirmations, screenshots of bank transfers, photos of jewelry. Not flirty notes, not late-night apologies. Transactional language. Bring it tonight. Receipt received. Deliver. She wasn't having an affair in the romantic sense. She was laundering our life into someone else's pockets. Stay with me, because the stranger in those messages would show up in our living room before the week was out. I followed the trail without drama. I didn't shout. I watched. I learned the rhythm. Small payments, small sales, then one fat payment that emptied the account. She sold things I'd saved for. The watch my father gave me. The vintage stereo we promised we'd fix. The car I'd been paying off for years. Each sale was a quiet theft, a betrayal disguised as necessity. One night, I heard a knock. Not the polite knock of a neighbor, but the precise knock of a man who expects doors to open. I opened, and there he stood. Polite, expensive collar, a smell of someone who always travels first class. He smiled at me like he was a guest in my story, and he greeted my wife as if he owned lines at the top of our bank statement. I said later, "You were helping him." She said, "No, he's complicated." Her voice had a tension I didn't used to hearing. She used to stay and watch movies with me. Now she spoke in negotiations. The micro-hook? In her messages, he called her, not by a pet name, but by a code word. The same word stamped on a receipt I later found in the glove box. That little paper would be the map that led me down the last hallway of truth. When I sat with the printed messages and the receipts, the pattern was obscene in its clarity. He didn't love her. He didn't rescue her. He purchased access. He purchased appearances. She became a ledger entry. Payment in exchange for presence, presence in exchange for praise, praise for the illusion of being valued. I confronted her that night in the kitchen, light low, the fridge humming like a courtroom. She tried to make it small. She said, "It's for us. I did it for the kids, for our future." She spoke with the rehearsed cadence of someone reading a defense written in the shadows. "Then tell me why there are flight receipts, hotel bookings, and a box from a boutique we can't afford," I said. She looked at me, and for the first time, the wall went down. She admitted it, not in a dramatic confession, more like a tired inventory. She said, "I needed something. I thought if I gave him enough, he'd make it all okay." Her voice cracked, not with shame, but with the dull regret of someone who learned too late that you can't buy love by paying for attention. Listen close, because what happens when the payments stop is the part people don't see in the glossy feeds. He stopped answering. The messages that had been clinical and constant turned to silence. When the attention dried up, the gifts vanished, and the pockets that once opened politely shut. She came home from a weekend that wasn't a vacation and unfolded like a person who had been returned by a courier. She begged. It was not the cinematic begging of a movie. It was ragged, small, real. She asked me to forgive her, to let the past be a lesson, to patch what she had torn. She offered to return the money. She offered to sell everything she had left. She offered apologies like coins. I could have used the police. I could have demanded the transfers reversed. I could have executed revenge in a dozen petty ways that feel satisfying in the cold glow of rage. But this wasn't about evidence anymore. It was about the thing that had been cashed out of me, trust. I took her suitcase. I filled it with what she chose to keep. A few dresses, a watch she still insisted belonged to her. I set it by the door. I didn't shout. I didn't smash. There was no cinematic showdown. There was the quiet authority of someone who had been broken and now refused to be broken again. You made your choice. Live with it, I said. She collapsed into the couch and covered her face. The house felt simultaneously huge and hollow. I shut the door behind her when she left, not to be cruel, but to protect the strange, fragile thing that remained, the life I could still build for myself. Here's the part people always ask about. Did I call the cops? Yes. I filed a report. The bank traced some transfers. Some items were recovered, others were not. The man with the expensive collar? He had a name and an empire, but no conscience. He shrugged when authorities came knocking, and for a while it felt like justice was a slow, bureaucratic thing that never took the form of a perfect ending. People will tell you to forgive, to reconcile, to be the bigger person. Others will shout that I was cruel. I'm not here to moralize. I am telling you what happened, a true story of infidelity, theft, and betrayal, because it is heavy and because it's a warning. If you're still with me, here's the real question that sits at the bottom of this whole mess. When someone sells your life in small installments, are they redeemable? Can a relationship be salvaged after your savings, your heirlooms, your future have been converted into someone else's luxury? I leaned over the table that night and looked at the empty seat across from me. I lit a cigarette I had promised myself I wouldn't take again. The smoke curled toward the ceiling like a question. Tell me, in the comments, write forgive if you would take her back, and leave if you wouldn't. Don't just press a button. Say why. If this is a true story you've lived, share it. Reddit-style truths are the rawest teachers. And if the first line made your throat close like mine did, hit like and subscribe because these stories don't heal alone.